Es increíble lo que está pasando en el mundo. Luego de muchos años en que la cultura moderna no ha parado de tratar el agua de lluvia como un residuo, empiezan a surgir casos en distintos puntos del mundo que demuestran que el buen manejo del agua de lluvia tiene el potencial de mejorar la productividad del suelo, favorecer la reforestación y minimizar el riesgo de sequías, inundaciones y, lo más importante, incendios forestales. En este video entraremos en detalles en algunos proyectos exitosos en diferentes países, con distintos climas y en una variedad de culturas. Todos ellos usan métodos sencillos para cambiar la forma de la tierra y permitir al agua de lluvia quedarse y filtrarse hacia el subsuelo, regresando hacia la tierra o dirigiéndola hacia lagunas de filtrado y reservorios para almacenaje. Los resultados son impresionantes. A menudo estos métodos son prácticas ancestrales, como ocurre en Ecuador. Son métodos para ralentizar el desplazamiento del agua de lluvia, devolviéndola hacia la tierra. La modernidad ha dejado atrás todos estos métodos, causando escasez de agua. Ahora ellos vuelven con adaptaciones para nuestros tiempos.
The Los Plateau in northern China is a region that was denuded of plants, resulting in serious soil erosion. The land dried up because hills were stripped bare by deforestation, overcropping, and overgrazing. The earth was just washing down into the rivers, causing floods of muddy water below. Winds were turning the unstable soils into massive dust storms, which were blowing into China's cities and towns. The government identified this problem and selected 35,000 square kilometers of the plateau to regenerate. The way that the project leaders described it to the poor farmers was that they needed to dress the landscape. The hilltops needed to wear hats, and they were replanted with trees. The hills needed to wear belts, so they built terraces all along the slopes for planting crops and trees. And the hills needed to wear shoes, so they built dams for water storage at the base of the slopes. They designated the steepest slopes and gullies as protected ecological zones, and farmers were paid not to farm them and to keep their livestock away from sensitive areas. You can see the transformation through Mr. Liu's footage over a 15-year period. A region-wide design implemented from the tops to the bottoms of these slopes brought these landscapes and communities from degradation and poverty to natural wealth and financial abundance in just over a decade. So inspiring.
Veamos qué ocurrió en África.
2 years ago, before the work, this was a barren wasteland. Nothing had been grown here for 40 years. Life has returned. Thanks to the work of the villagers in the World Food Program, using techniques and systems that I'm going to tell you about in this video, the tides have changed and natural wealth is growing back and growing the livelihoods of the people here.
At WFP, we have planted and rehabilitated some 300,000 hectares of land over the past years. Around 10 to 15% of water that will be caught here will enter the ground and will recharge the groundwater tables. That way, we actually achieve a balance of water. So we are not depleting the water resources, but we're making sure that we keep enough water in the ground for future generations.
The design is to actually have a barrier of trees to stop the expansion of the desert southward. So I'm here on the ground at the Great Green Wall to show how we can restore degraded landscapes, we can keep the Sahara at bay, create abundance, have people living here and thriving.
We need to create water harvesting structures that maintain the water on site. If we look at the soil the way it is right now, the water cannot stay here. So it rains and it flows away. So these half moons, they are the first step in this rehabilitation process, in this soil build-up process. On this site here, we have 7,500 half moons. We have horticulture beds where we can plant tomatoes, okra, and so on. Here we have trenches where we have planted moringa, we have planted pigeon pea, and we have planted also some okra that has grown wildly here. And the idea here is that we have biomass trenches that will provide biomass as the system grows. In between these trenches, We have planting pits where we have planted fruit trees. We have guava, citrus. This is just the very first step in this pilot. We'll also be using other native species that we'll be planting in the pits that will drive the rejuvenation of the soil and the protection of the soil as the system starts growing into abundance and producing food and life for the people here. In its mature state, this system will look like a forest. Forest lines that will be producing biomass and fruit, and we'll have other lines in between where we'll be producing horticulture, vegetables. This is exactly the way nature works and has been forgotten over time. We have rescued it from the past.
Quizás la historia más inspiradora es la de Arabia Saudita.
The climate in Albeda is daunting. We average 60 millimeters of rain a year, and the temperature reaches 50 degrees Celsius in July and August. The climate is hyper-arid, and the land is non-arable. This region could be transformed into a mix of mountain and desert agroforestries, with mangrove agroforestries and seawater agricultures along the coast, and sustainable economic development. But we knew that floods were also the only sustainable source of water in the region. Thus, our objective was to slow down the floods in the mountains, enabling the water to sink into the ground once it hit the floodplain. This water would be the foundation for a silvopasture system, a savanna-oriented agroecology for re-establishing sustainable grazing patterns while providing resilience through tree crops. For 3 years, we worked in the mountains, basing our work on a mix of Incan and Nabatean systems.
Y el financiamiento se detuvo y las lluvias se detuvieron también. Una dura sequía que duró 2 años y medio en la que no hubo absolutamente nada de lluvia. La tierra fue regenerada para permitir las prácticas ancestrales de pastoreo gracias a un diseño que permitió la penetración del agua de lluvia en el suelo.
We have seen a dramatic increase in bird, lizard, and insect populations, even walking sticks. But it is also living proof of what we can do when people work with each other and with nature. It is a testament to the potential of regenerative agricultures and a template for the reforestation of millions of hectares of desert landscapes in the Arabian Peninsula and beyond.
Desde Australia aprenderemos sobre la protección contra inundaciones.
We have had a catastrophic rain event. It's definitely a 100-year flood. It's 900 to 1,000 houses that are going to have to be demolished because they're so wrecked by the floodwater. It went right over the roofs. People's lives are ruined by this event. How did Zaytuna Farm handle that event? Well, let's go and have a look. This is Tinker's Bubble. It's one of our main irrigation dams, actually. And there are 2 main catchments on Zaytuna Farm, this one and Canorigan Road, and we concentrate them towards the Central Valley. Take the enormous amount of water coming off the hill country, and it came up over the dam wall. You can see the flood patterns here, the flow patterns of the water rushing through here. So normally that will actually breach a dam wall and cut it away. But we have this really good clumping bamboo plantation here.
Se plantaron muchos árboles en los barrancos para estabilizar la pendiente. Pequeñas presas con aliviaderos anchos y planos servían para distribuir la fuerza de la crecida. En la granja de Guelph, el agua de lluvia se contiene en lo alto de la propiedad y se frena y dirige para hidratar toda la propiedad con estructuras de captación de agua. ¿Y qué hay de la prevención de incendios forestales? Aquí se muestra cómo los pantanos hidratan la tierra, favorecen el crecimiento de las plantas y frenan los incendios forestales. La tierra hidratada favorece el crecimiento de la vegetación. Cuando el suelo es verde, no se quema. Y ahora nos vamos a Ecuador.
Intensas lluvias y cambios extremos en el clima son a veces causados por el ser humano, pero somos nosotros también capaces de sanar a la tierra y devolverle su poder de creación a la naturaleza.
Conocimos el trabajo de un hombre excepcional, Sepp Holzer. Él no es un ingeniero ni un científico, sino un campesino de los Alpes austríacos. Sepp transformó su terreno de un monocultivo de pinos que estaba dañando el suelo en una granja con terrazas, estanques, árboles frutales, verduras, un sistema ecológico complejo.
Es decir, imaginemos que este recipiente es un río. ¿Qué pasaría si le echamos el equivalente de tierra que bajaría en el río por la erosión? La tierra ocupa más espacio. El agua se desborda, creando las inundaciones.
Cuando llueve, las raíces de los árboles hacen que la tierra absorba gran parte del agua. Pero cuando se cortan los bosques, el agua ya no se retiene y se lleva la capa de tierra fértil hacia los ríos.
Se puede frenar la erosión construyendo un ambiente de retención para aguas y tierra.
Lo primero que hizo Sepp en su terreno en Austria fue convertirlo en terrazas y luego construyó las piscinas para hidratar el suelo. Los estanques de Sepp no tienen fondo de plástico, así la tierra alrededor no necesita ser regada porque absorbe como una esponja el agua de las piscinas. La segunda piscina logra frenar la velocidad con la que baja el agua. Y así, cada nivel de terrazas tiene agua regulada siempre, tanto en la época de lluvia como en la sequía.
Es la mezcla, la simbiosis de las plantas. Cada planta ayuda a la otra a crecer, a protegerse, a hacerse más fuerte, a dar a la tierra su diferente abono. Esto es un juego de niños comparado con terrenos que he trabajado de verdad difíciles. 365 días al año hay vegetación.
Esta finca ha estado cosechando agua de lluvia por más de 5 años. Todo a su alrededor está seco. Y ahora la India, que lidera la revolución mundial del agua.
The Pani Foundation is an organization founded by Bollywood megastar Aamir Khan. They host a competition called the Water Cup, which is a contest between villages in the state of Maharashtra to see which village can install the most water harvesting structures in a 45-day period. Since 2016, thousands of villages have competed, and the resulting water harvesting structures equate to over 145 billion gallons, or 550 billion liters of water storage capacity built between 2016 and 2020.
This year, the rainwater did not leave villages. It made its home there. This has been achieved by a people's movement, the fruit of the sweat and toil of those who took on the mission of making their villages water abundant by taking part in the Satyamev Jayate Water Cup contest. The contest started in the year 2016 with just 3 talukas in Maharashtra. Expanded in 2017 to 30 talukas and grew 25 times this year, 2018, to reach 75 talukas across Maharashtra. More than 4,000 villages participated. Over a 2-month period, more than 20,000 villagers were trained in the science of watershed management. The Water Cup was scheduled to begin on the 8th of April. But from the night of April 7th itself, lakhs of water warriors, fully armed to take on the drought, kept vigil for the battle to begin. At the stroke of midnight, their army launched a determined attack to vanquish drought. A wild dream to free oneself in just 45 days from the shackles of drought with one's own might. With every passing day, the army of water warriors grew. In these 45 days, the rising and setting sun saw many a miracle unfold. Somewhere it was woman power, elsewhere the determination of youth, or even an army of children.
मी सर्व विद्यार्थ्यांना तयार केलं व आमची एक घट्ट तुफान सेना तयार करायची. माझी 150 मुलांची टीम आहे.
Even seniors, uncaring of their aches and pains, worked obsessively towards a brighter future for coming generations. By day, the sun was witness to people's madness, and when by night the baton was handed over to the moon, it saw thousands doing shramdan without a moment's rest. Those 45 days became a festival of labor, full of song, dance, and celebration. By the time the competition came to a close, this grand obsession had transformed the face of entire landscapes. Driven by this collective madness, villagers who had once struggled for a single tanker of water created with their own hands structures that could harvest more than 222 billion liters of water. If filled in tankers of 10,000 liter capacity, this quantity of water would fill more than 22 million tankers. And if these tankers were lined up, they would circumnavigate the earth more than 3 times. People are celebrating their newfound affinity with water. Nature and mankind are dancing with joy as they become one.
¿Lo ves?
Do you see?
This is possible here.
El ingrediente principal es la colaboración. The main ingredient is collaboration. Please, por favor.
Para nuestra generación.
For our generation.
Para todos los seres vivos.
For all of the beings.